My name is Martha Johnson, and I am 71 years old. I live alone in a modest one-story house in Bakersfield, California. The walls are covered in photographs, smiling faces of children I once taught, landscapes from trips I never thought I'd take, and self-portraits of a woman who survived more than she should have. People who meet me now see a gentle grandmother with grey curls tucked neatly behind her ears. They see the chamomile tea in my hands, the camera strap around my neck, the soft voice that calls them dear. But what they don't see, what no one saw for most of my life, is the girl who grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in a house that looked perfect from the outside, but rotted with secrets on the inside. I've carried those secrets for decades. I buried them beneath work, beneath motherhood, beneath years of smiling when I wanted to scream. But now, at 71, with the clock ticking louder than ever, I've decided I won't leave this earth without telling the truth. Because back then, when I was just 11 years old, 10 men gathered in my father's living room every Saturday. Men everyone respected. Men the town trusted. Men who broke me, piece by piece, while smiling like gentlemen. And for years I thought I had no power. But what they never knew was that small lenses have big eyes. And one day, the very thing they laughed off as a toy became the weapon that could destroy them. That's the story I'm about to tell you, my dear friends. A story of silence, of survival, of justice that arrived decades late. And it begins on one cold June afternoon in 1965, when my mother closed the front door behind her and left me alone in the house with my father's guests. I was born in 1954 in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, a place where the air always smelled of damp soil and wood smoke, where neighbours waved from porches and gossip travelled faster than the church bells on Sunday morning. From the outside, it was a good town, small, quiet, decent. Our house stood on a dirt road at the edge of the Pine Hill neighbourhood, painted a cheerful pale blue with white-trimmed windows that creaked when the wind picked up. On the porch, my grandfather used to sit on Sundays, puffing his pipe, his face disappearing in clouds of sweet tobacco. To the people passing by, our house looked like the picture of an American dream. Inside, though, it was different. There was laughter, yes, my brothers running wild, my sister tugging at my dresses, but that laughter always dimmed when my father's footsteps crossed the threshold. My mother called it respect. Now I know it was fear. Father's name was Alfred Johnson, broad-shouldered, serious, always in pressed shirts even after long hours at his hardware store. Folks in town trusted him. They said he was a man of his word. If Alfred promised nails by Tuesday, you got nails by Tuesday. But inside our walls, his word was law, and no one dared question it. Mother, Grace Johnson, was a softer presence. A petite woman with her hair always pinned in a neat bun, hands calloused from endless work. She could embroider roses onto plain cloth, bake the sweetest apple pies, and hush a crying baby faster than anyone. She was love itself, just not strong enough to fight the shadows gathering in our home. We were 4 children, me, the eldest, then my brother Everett, mischievous but loyal, Cynthia, my little sister with curls like corn silk, and Thomas, the baby, born when I was already old enough to help raise him. We were noisy, playful, full of the kind of dreams children have when the world still feels safe. Our days were filled with routines, walking barefoot in the red clay backyard, pretending apples were feasts for our make-believe games, or collecting acorns beneath the giant oak tree at school. In the evenings we'd gather around the wood stove as Mother cooked beans, cornbread, and garden vegetables. The kitchen smelled of comfort, herbs, smoke, and safety. But when the clock neared 7 and my father's boots echoed on the porch, everything shifted, voices lowered, chairs straightened, smiles faded, the warmth of the kitchen dimmed, as if even the fire knew to burn quieter. By day, Lancaster was sunshine and neighbourly smiles. By night, in the Johnson household, it was something else entirely. And when Sundays came, the masks everyone wore in town grew thicker, heavier, and more dangerous. It was June of 1965. I had just turned 11. The summer air in Lancaster was thick and humid, the kind that clung to your skin no matter how many times you wiped your forehead. That Sunday morning looked like any other. We went to church, sang hymns, shook hands with neighbours, and smiled as though everything in our lives was perfect. After service, my mother gathered my siblings, preparing to take them to Aunt Ursula's house as she always did. But when she turned to me, her words sliced through the routine. "Martha," she said softly, not quite meeting my eyes. "Your father wants you to stay today. He says you're old enough to help serve the guests." There was something in her tone, something I didn't yet have words for. Fear disguised as obedience. She adjusted her bun, kissed my forehead, and left with the younger ones, leaving me behind in that silent, waiting house. By 3 o'clock, the cars started pulling in. One after another, shiny Chevrolets and Buicks crunched over the gravel. Men stepped out in pressed slacks and crisp button-down shirts. These weren't ordinary neighbours. These were the town's most respected men. There was Mr. Benedict, the county commissioner, who always shook hands a second too long. Dr. Clovis, the lawyer with gold-rimmed glasses. Mr. Juvenile, who owned the pharmacy on Main Street. Mr. Oswald, the store owner with the booming laugh. Even Sheriff Derval, his badge glinting against his vest. And at the centre of it all, my father, Alfred Johnson, smiling, proud, as though he'd gathered kings in his living room. The poker table was already set. Green felt cloth, new decks of cards, whiskey glasses lined neatly in a row. Cigarette smoke curled toward the ceiling as the men settled in, their voices low, their laughter sharp. Then my father called out, "Martha, come here." I stepped into the room, my hands folded neatly in front of me, as mother had taught. My father placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Gentlemen," he said, "this is my daughter. Today she learns how to be a good hostess." "Pretty little thing," one of them muttered. Another chuckled. Someone called me Sarah, though my name was Martha. I didn't correct him. My father's grip tightened, warning me to stay silent. "Go on," he ordered. "Serve the men." So I poured the whiskey with trembling hands, careful not to spill a drop. They watched me the way predators watch a rabbit, but I didn't understand that yet. I thought it was just respect, attention, approval. But when my father leaned close and whispered, "Now comes the real test," I felt a chill crawl up my spine. That was the first time I realized the men in that room weren't just guests. They were something much worse. At first it seemed harmless, silly even. They told me to balance on one foot while counting to 30. My father's eyes were locked on me, daring me to hesitate. So I obeyed, wobbling as they laughed and tapped their cards against the table. "Now hop like a frog to the wall and back," another ordered. More laughter, more smoke. I told myself it was just a game. Strange, yes, but maybe this was what grown men did when they were drinking. I didn't want to embarrass my father, I wanted him proud. But the games didn't stop. They grew sharper, heavier. Crawl on all fours. Sing a hymn, louder. Stand still as a statue until we say move. Every command came with a chorus of chuckles, a hand slamming a card down, the sound of whiskey glasses clinking. Then my father reached for something in the cabinet, a worn leather house slipper. He held it up like a gavel. "Now, Sarah," he said, using that name again, "you know disobedient girls must be corrected." I froze. My chest tightened. I hadn't disobeyed, had I? I had done everything they asked. My voice shook. "But father, I—" Silence. His tone was sharp, final. "This is for your own good, for the lesson." One by one, the men rose. Each took the slipper. Each delivered a sharp sting to my legs or arms. Not hard enough to bruise, but enough to humiliate. Enough to remind me that my body wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the ritual of their laughter. When the last man sat down, I thought it was over. I thought maybe I'd pass the test and be dismissed. But then Mr. Oswald, the store owner, smiled and said, "Let's give her a final memory." He disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a kettle of steaming water. My heart pounded as he walked past me into my bedroom. Moments later, I heard the hiss of liquid soaking my mattress, my safe place, my only sanctuary. "There," my father announced proudly, as if it were some great lesson. "Now, every night, she'll remember obedience when she lays down to sleep." The men laughed. The smoke thickened. My eyes burned with tears I didn't dare shed. That was the beginning, and it would not end for 6 long years. After that first Sunday, I told myself it had been a mistake. Maybe it would never happen again. Maybe my mother would notice the wet mattress, the marks on my skin, the silence in my eyes. Maybe she would stop it. But the next Sunday, the cars came again, and the next, and the next. It became a rhythm, like church bells or seasons changing. The men would arrive with their polished shoes and careful smiles. My mother would leave with my siblings, her face a mixture of duty and something darker. My father would take his place at the head of the poker table, a king on a throne built of whiskey and secrets, and I would become Sarah. The games shifted. Some weeks it was the slipper. Other weeks it was hours of standing still in the center of the room while they ignored me, as though I were furniture. Sometimes they asked questions they knew I couldn't answer. Who wrote the Constitution? What's the square root of 361? Every wrong answer earned a punishment, another slap, another humiliation, another small piece of me gone. At first, I cried openly. Later I learned to stare at the wall, to lock my eyes on a crack in the plaster and pretend I was somewhere else. I created places in my head, a meadow with tall grass, a sky filled with kites, a small cottage by a river. My body obeyed them, but my soul fled far away. By Monday morning, I was Martha again, quiet, obedient, top of my class. My teachers praised me. My classmates thought I was shy. No one asked why my eyes were duller, why I no longer played in the yard after school. Even at home, the mask held. During the week, my father barely spoke to me, as though Sunday's girl didn't exist. My mother cooked, cleaned, prayed. She never asked about the wet towels hidden under my mattress, or why I no longer laughed at my brother's jokes. Maybe she didn't want to know. Maybe she was as trapped as I was. By the time I was 13, I had perfected my double life. Martha in the daylight, Sarah in the shadows. 2 names, 2 girls, 1 body. And in the darkest corners of my mind, a seed of something dangerous began to grow. Someday, I thought, I will leave this house. And when I do, they will never see me coming. By 16, my body was taller, my voice steadier, and my fear thinner. Not gone, never gone, but stretched so thin it sometimes turned into anger. The Sundays still came. The men still gathered. But their laughter no longer pierced me like before. It grated, it insulted. I began to see them not as gods, but as cowards. Old, greedy men hiding their cruelty behind smoke and cards. One evening, after the session, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My cheek was red, my hair tangled, my eyes swollen from holding back tears. And for the first time, I whispered to myself, "This isn't forever." That spring, my high school English teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, gave me a gift that changed everything. An old Kodak camera. She said she saw something watchful in me. "You notice details others miss," she told me. I carried that camera everywhere. At first, I photographed ordinary things, abandoned barns, children skipping rope, the shadows of telephone poles stretching across the road at sunset. But soon the lens became something more. Through it, I learned control. I decided what to frame, what to cut out, what story to tell. While the men saw me as powerless, the camera reminded me I still had an eye that never blinked, an eye they could not command. And quietly, a thought formed. Dangerous, electrifying. What if I pointed the lens at them? What if the very thing they mocked as a silly toy became the trap? For months, I practiced angles, hiding the click of the shutter under coughs or footsteps. I learned how to load film quickly, how to tuck it into my pocket before anyone noticed. At night, I'd lock my bedroom door, develop the rolls in secret trays I bought with babysitting money. Slowly, my walls filled with faces. Faces of men who thought they owned me. My father, his friends. Their eyes half drunk, their smiles twisted, their hands in places they shouldn't be. Each photograph was a piece of power, stolen back. Each negative, a secret blade hidden under my pillow. And with every flash, every shadow captured, I whispered the same promise. One day, you'll see yourselves the way I see you, and the world will see too. The camera became my second heartbeat, always there, pulsing with the thrill of danger. By 17, I had rolls of film hidden in coffee tins, tucked beneath loose floorboards in my closet. Each one was proof, evidence, though I didn't yet know who I'd show it to, or when. That Sunday started like all the others. The men arrived in pressed suits, their cigars leaving trails in the air. My father dealt the cards. The room thickened with smoke, with laughter, with lies. I had the camera hidden in a shoebox, the lid cracked open just enough. My palms were damp, my stomach knotted. But when Mr. Oswald leaned back in his chair, grinning with his tie loosened, the urge hit me hard. Click. The sound was soft, but to me it rang like a gunshot. My father's head snapped up. Every nerve in my body went cold. I froze, the camera still warm in my hands.
A shutter. She's got that toy again.
Martha, bring it here.
I was just practicing, Father. I wanted to take your picture, all of you.
Ha! Let her. We look like kings at this table, don't we?
The others joined in, puffing up with pride, their egos saving me. My father hesitated, then snatched the camera from my hands. He turned it over, checked the back, even pressed the shutter once. But the film inside was empty. I'd slipped the loaded roll out just minutes earlier.
You waste your time. A girl's place isn't behind glass.
The men laughed again. I laughed too, though my hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the camera. That night, in my locked room, I pulled the hidden roll from under my mattress. My heart was still racing, but my lips curled into the first true smile I'd felt in years. They had no idea, and I had captured them forever. By day, I was the girl everyone expected me to be, honor roll student. Quiet, polite, the one teachers trusted to collect homework or run errands to the office. My classmates called me the Shadow, because I was always there but rarely spoke. And yet, in small moments, I tasted freedom. On warm afternoons, I'd walk home with Grace, my closest friend. She had a laugh that tumbled out like bells, a way of filling silence so I didn't have to. She'd tell me about boys, about parties, about the future she could already see, college, travel, love. I listened like she was describing another planet. Sometimes I brought my camera along. Grace would pose dramatically in fields of wildflowers, or pout against brick walls like the models in magazines. She loved being captured. She didn't know that for me it wasn't just fun, it was survival. Looking through the lens, I wasn't the broken girl in my father's house. I was an artist, a witness, a keeper of truth. But Sundays always came back. I'd sit at Grace's kitchen table on Saturdays, sipping lemonade, almost convincing myself I was normal. And then the dread would creep in, the clock ticking toward tomorrow, the cars that would pull into our driveway, the sound of the door closing behind my mother and siblings. 2 lives stacked on top of each other. Martha, the student. Sarah, the sacrifice. And holding them together, the thin strip of film curling inside my camera, whispering that one day these worlds would collide. Because sooner or later I knew I couldn't keep them both. It happened on an ordinary Sunday. The smoke, the laughter, the clink of glasses, it all blurred together until Mr. Green's eyes landed on me. He wasn't like the others. The grocer, the mechanic, even the town preacher. They all took their turns, then returned to their cards, satisfied. But Mr. Green, he watched, always watching. His gaze was sharp, like a blade sliding between my ribs. That afternoon, while my father stepped into the kitchen for another bottle, Mr. Green leaned forward in his chair. His voice dropped low, almost a whisper.
You've got secrets, don't you, girl?
The room fell quiet. My stomach dropped. I forced a nervous laugh. No, sir. But his eyes didn't move. They travelled from my hands, folded tightly in my lap, to the camera case sitting by the hallway door.
He smiled, thin, knowing. One day I'll see what you're hiding.
The men chuckled, brushing it off, but my father's gaze lingered on me longer than usual when he returned. That night, I didn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the house, felt like footsteps coming closer. I checked my hiding spots again and again. The coffee tins, the floorboards, the envelopes taped beneath drawers. If anyone found the film, it wouldn't just be punishment. It would be the end. And yet, something in me hardened. If Mr. Green suspected me, then he was right. I did have secrets, but they weren't just mine anymore. They were his, my father's, all of theirs. The camera had turned the tables, and even if it killed me, I wasn't about to give it up. The next Sunday, I felt it before I even stepped into the room. The men laughed too loudly. My father poured drinks too quickly. And Mr. Green, he didn't take his usual seat. Instead, he leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes fixed on me. They played their game of cards, but I couldn't focus on the rhythm anymore. Every muscle in my body was tight, waiting. When the clock struck 4, Mr. Green spoke. "Why don't we let the girl take her little pictures today?" The words froze me. My father frowned. "Pictures? For what?" Mr. Green shrugged, casual, but his smile was cruel. "She's always pointing that toy around. Let's see if it's worth keeping. Maybe she can make us look important." The table erupted with laughter. "Ha! Yes, let her! Get our good side, Sarah. King's at the table!" My father hesitated. His pride swelled under their jeers. Finally, he shoved the camera case across the floor with his shoe. "Do it, but make it quick." My hands trembled as I bent down, lifting the camera with the grace of a priest holding holy relics. Inside, my heart thundered. If I aim wrong, if I slip, they'll know. They'll destroy everything. I raised the lens. The men puffed out their chests, grinning like schoolboys. I clicked once, twice, 3 times. My smile was steady, but inside I was screaming. Then Mr. Green stood. He walked behind me, close enough that I could smell his sour breath. His hand rested heavy on my shoulder. "There now," he said softly. "You see how easy it is when you're honest." I swallowed hard, forcing my body not to flinch. He leaned closer, his whisper meant for me alone. "But I'll be watching, girl, every Sunday, and the moment I see something you don't want me to..." His grip tightened. "It'll be your last." The table laughed again, thinking it was a joke, but my blood ran cold. That night, alone in my room, I developed the pictures. Their faces emerged on paper, smiling, careless, blind. And for the first time, I didn't just see evidence, I saw leverage. After Mr. Green's test, the sessions grew harsher. It was as if they sensed me slipping, sensed I wasn't as obedient as before. The games stretched longer. The punishments came quicker. My father's hand was heavier, his voice sharper. They tried to remind me I was theirs, but they didn't know. Every strike, every order, every laugh carved their faces deeper into my film. Each moment of cruelty became a memory they couldn't erase. One Sunday, while the men smoked in the kitchen, I was left in the parlour, still and silent, as if on display. My father's belt rested on the table like a warning. The air was thick with heat and smoke. My legs ached from standing. That's when I noticed it. Mr. Green's hat, left carelessly on the arm of a chair. Beside it, his cigar smouldering in the ashtray. And tucked into the band of the hat, a folded piece of paper. I don't know why, but my heart lunged. I stepped closer, pretending to adjust my dress. The paper slipped easily into my palm before I tucked it into my sleeve. Hours later, in the safety of my room, I unfolded it. Just a receipt. From a hotel in Harrisburg. Room number. Date. His name scrawled across the bottom. A secret. His secret. I tucked it beneath the floorboard with my film. My chest rose and fell, not with fear this time, but with something new. Something dangerous. For the first time, I realized the chains they put on me were also the chains I could use against them. Fathers know their daughters, or at least they know when something is slipping. By the time I was 17, mine had grown sharper with me. He no longer looked at me as a child to be scolded, but as a traitor waiting to betray him. "Why do you stare so much?" he snapped one Sunday as I stood too still by the doorway. "Why are you always watching?" I lowered my eyes quickly, muttered an apology. But inside, I knew. He had noticed. Not the camera, not the film, but the change. The spark in me I couldn't hide anymore. That night, after the men left, he didn't send me to bed. Instead, he sat me at the table. The clock ticked. His glass was half empty. His eyes were colder than the whiskey. "You think you're clever," he said. His voice was low, controlled. That was always worse than shouting. "I see the way you look at us, like you're above it all, like you're keeping score." My hands tightened in my lap. I wanted to scream, to tell him I was keeping score, that every laugh, every hand, every scar was written down in my secret archive. But my lips stayed pressed shut. "Don't forget." He leaned closer, his breath sour, his words deliberate. "You are mine. Every inch, every breath. If you ever forget that." He let the sentence hang. A threat, an echo. Then, as suddenly as he'd started, he stood, knocked back the last of his drink, and stumbled to bed. I sat there long after, the kitchen clock ticking in the dark, my heart pounding against my ribs. He was right about one thing. I was keeping score. And the day was coming when he'd find out just how much. I always thought the sound of a camera click was soft. But that night, when I finally pressed the shutter, it thundered inside my chest like a cannon. It started small. Mr. Clovis, the lawyer, had left a folder of papers on the coffee table one Sunday. I was serving whiskey when I saw a typed list of names, his clients, his contacts, the men who came to our house. My hands trembled as I poured his drink. In that moment, I realized something. Powerful men always leave a trail, and trails can burn. At 17, I had saved enough coins from after-school jobs at the corner store to buy a second-hand camera from a pawn shop in town. Nothing fancy, a cheap Instamatic, small enough to hide under my coat. I told my father it was for school projects. He didn't care. He thought girls with hobbies were harmless. But that Sunday, when the men laughed and played cards, I wasn't just standing in the corner anymore. I was taking notes in my head. Who sat where, who touched what time each one arrived. And late that night, after everyone left and my father was asleep, I took my first photograph. The poker table, still set with cards, glasses and ashtrays. Evidence, proof. A scene no one outside our walls would believe existed. I developed the pictures at a drugstore 2 towns over. The first prints were shaky and grainy, but clear enough. Seeing those images, real, tangible, did something to me. For the first time, the nightmare wasn't just in my head. It was on paper. It could be shown. It could be used. Week after week, I grew bolder, hiding the camera under the couch cushions, snapping shots of shoes, of rings on hands, of the back of my father's neck as he leaned over the cards. I was careful, deliberate. My heart pounded every time the shutter clicked, but the thrill was sharper than the fear. By spring, I had a shoebox under my bed filled with rolls of film, each one a bullet, each one a piece of the story no one wanted to tell. I didn't know yet how I would use them, or when, but I knew this. The girl they called Sarah was no longer their toy. She was a witness, and witnesses can change everything. The shoebox under my bed had grown heavy, not just with film rolls, but with the weight of truth. Every click of that Instamatic had been a scream I couldn't let out loud, and screams, if buried too long, turn poisonous. I needed someone to hear mine. That spring, Mrs. Turner, my history teacher, assigned us a project, The Changing Face of America. We had to collect photographs, clippings, anything that showed how our small town was shifting in the 1970s. It was the first time anyone had asked me for pictures, and my heart raced. This was it, a reason to step into the light. I brought her landscapes first, barns, kids at play, the town square, safe shots. She smiled, nodded. Then one afternoon, when class ended and the hallway was empty, I lingered at her desk. My fingers trembled as I slid one photograph from my bag. It wasn't explicit, just the poker table, littered with cards and half-empty whiskey glasses. 8 sets of hands visible from the wrist down, no faces, but the rings, the watches, the sheriff's silver badge glinting faintly. If you knew these men, you'd know. Mrs. Turner studied it for a long time. Her brows furrowed, then softened. She looked up at me, almost searching my face for permission.
Where did you take this, Martha?
My throat tightened, my lips parted, but no words came.
Be careful what you show, dear. Truth has sharp edges.
Her voice wasn't disbelief. It was warning. And for the first time, I felt a crack in the silence that had sealed me in for so long. Someone had seen. Someone knew. That night, as I lay awake, the shoebox under my bed felt like it was pulsing, alive. I realized then I wasn't just gathering photos anymore. I was gathering weapons. But weapons need allies, and I had just found my first. Time is patient when it wants to destroy you, but it is also patient when it wants to save you. By the summer of '71, I was 18, old enough to leave, but not yet strong enough to forget. The sessions had grown darker, the men bolder. My father's shadow stretched over every part of me. Still, under my bed, the shoebox of film had grown into an arsenal, each roll a nail in his coffin.
Pretty Sarah, maybe next week you'll serve just me.
They thought I was powerless. They didn't see the lens. They never saw the weapon in plain sight. That week, I rode 2 towns over and visited the Lancaster Gazette. A small paper, nothing grand, but one with a hungry young reporter named Daniel Reeves. I'd seen his bylines before, stories about corruption in city contracts, quiet scandals the town wished would disappear. He looked at me strangely when I placed the shoebox on his desk.
Miss Johnson, do you understand what this is? Who these men are?
Yes, and I know what they've done.
For a long moment, he just sat there, flipping through frame after frame, rings on fingers, whiskey glasses, cards spread wide, a sheriff's badge, a lawyer's monogrammed cufflinks. Not one explicit picture, but together, a tapestry of guilt.
If I print this, they'll come after you, after me, after this whole paper.
Then make it loud enough they can't hide.
And he did. 3 weeks later, the Gazette ran a front-page exposé. The Saturday sessions, power, men, and silence in Lancaster. My father's name was there, along with 8 others. The photographs filled the page, stark and undeniable. The town exploded. Neighbours whispered in pews, men resigned from their posts, wives packed bags. Investigations began. Some denied, some fled. My father, so proud, so untouchable, was seen on Main Street with his head lowered for the first time in his life. And me, I left Lancaster. I boarded a bus west and never looked back. It took decades for my hands to stop shaking, decades to build a life where cameras were tools of beauty, not survival. But every time I lift a lens now, I remember. Truth can wound, but it can also heal. I am 71 now. My hair is white, my hands are slower, but my eyes are still sharp. On my shelf sits that old Instamatic, scratched and worn. I never use it anymore, but I keep it as a reminder, because in the end it wasn't a fist that freed me. It was a click. One small sound that roared louder than all their laughter. And I will never let the world forget.